Right, so first things first. To really get what behaviorism is all about, you have to understand what it was fighting against. And that was this idea called Cartesian dualism. You've probably heard of it. It's that classic idea that your mind and your body are two totally, fundamentally different things.
And the philosopher Gilbert Ryle, he gave this idea an unforgettable nickname. He called it the dogma of the ghost in the machine. And you can see why, right? It's this powerful, poetic image. But for Ryle, it was an image that rests on a massive misunderstanding of what the mind actually is.
Ryle had a specific name for this error. He called it a category mistake. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It's when you put a concept into the wrong logical box. You're treating something as one kind of thing, when it's actually something else entirely. And according to Ryle, that's exactly what dualism does. It makes the mistake of treating the mind as a thing, just a non-physical one. And Ryle comes up with this brilliant analogy to explain it. Picture this. A visitor gets a tour of a university, maybe Oxford or Cambridge. They're shown everything: the beautiful colleges, the libraries, the science labs, all the administrative buildings. They see all the component parts. And at the end of the tour, they turn to the guide and ask, "Okay, I've seen all that, but where is the university?" See the mistake? They're thinking the university is another thing they can point to, right alongside the buildings. But it's not. The university is the way all those things are organized and work together. So Ryle says dualism does the exact same thing with the mind. It just assumes the mind is this separate thing, a pilot, a ghost that operates the body. Okay, so if the ghost in the machine is a big mistake, then what's the alternative? Well, the first major attempt at a solution came from a group called the logical positivists. And one of their main guys, Carl Hempel, had this big idea. He wanted to make philosophy just as rigorous and testable as, say, physics or chemistry. And to do that, Hempel relied on this really strict rule called the verification principle. And you've got to get this part because it's absolutely crucial. It basically says that for any statement to mean anything at all, you have to be able to describe how you would test it, what observable evidence would prove it right or wrong. And if you can't test it, not even in theory, then according to Hempel, that statement is literally meaningless. It's just noise. So how does this apply to the mind? Well, let's take a simple statement like, Paul has a toothache. Now, following the verification principle, there's no way for us to scientifically verify Paul's private inner feeling of pain. It's locked away. But what can we verify? We can see him crying, we can hear him say, "I have a toothache," a dentist can find a cavity, we can measure his blood pressure, we can see all the outward signs. So for Hempel, the meaning of Paul has a toothache isn't some invisible feeling. It is the collection of all those observable physical facts. And that's the absolute core of it. For Hempel's hard behaviorism, talking about mental states is just a kind of shorthand. It's a quicker way of talking about physical states and behaviors. You can translate one into the other perfectly with no loss of meaning. The ghost is completely out of the picture. All that's left is the machine and what it does. But you can probably see a few issues here, right? This idea of a perfect, hardline translation seemed way too rigid for a lot of people. And that included Gilbert Ryle, the guy who came up with the ghost in the machine idea in the first place. So he proposed a more flexible version, what we call soft behaviorism. Ryle points out a really obvious problem for Hempel's view. What about all the mental states we have that don't lead to any actual behavior right now? For example, someone can know how to speak French, but they're sitting there silently, speaking English. Or think about a super tough person, a stoic who's in agony but isn't showing it at all. Hempel's hard behaviorism really struggles to explain these kinds of cases. So Ryle's solution was to bring in this idea of dispositions. Now, a disposition isn't about what something is doing right this second. It's about what it would do or is likely to do if the circumstances were right. It's all about potential. And we usually talk about it using a bunch of if-then statements. Here's a simple way to think about it. Take a sugar cube. Sugar is soluble. That's a property it has. It's disposition. It's soluble even when it's just sitting there, dry, in a bowl. Now, that's totally different from the occurrence of it actually dissolving when you finally drop it into your cup of tea. So for Ryle, a disposition is a property that's always there, even when nothing is happening. And this is Ryle's big move. He says that mental states, things like knowing French or being brave or believing in something, they're just like the solubility of sugar. They are complex dispositions. So, to say someone knows French isn't to say something about a mysterious process happening inside their head right now. No, it's to say a whole list of things. Like if you were to ask them,
comment ça va, then they would reply, très bien, merci. It's all about describing a pattern of potential behavior. And just like that, you've solved the problem of the silent French speaker or the person who's hiding their pain.
So being in pain just means you're likely to do stuff like this.
And here's the key part. You don't have to be doing these things right now.
So, there's what you're doing, and then there's what you're inclined to do.
This means talk about pain is really just talk about behavioral expectations.
Okay, but what about the pain you don't show? That's the big question, right?
Yeah, how does this theory handle someone who's in pain but hiding it?
For Ryle, it just means she's actively suppressing her pain behavior.
The disposition is still there, just hidden. It's not gone.
Okay, so that brings us to the main event, especially if you're revising this stuff. Let's do a direct side-by-side comparison of Hempel's hard behaviorism and Ryle's soft behaviorism. All right, let's really break down the key differences here. Hempel's version, the hard one, is all about what is. It's categorical. He's talking about what a person is actually doing, and he's convinced you can make a complete one-to-one translation from mental talk to physical talk. But Ryle's view is hypothetical. It's about what a person would do. And this is the really big difference. Ryle says you could never possibly finish the list of all the if-then statements that describe a mental state. The list is always open-ended. That means a complete perfect translation from the mental to the physical just isn't possible.